Big news in Diablo 4 after their longest campfire chat. But first,
my name is Dom Douglas, and I am back-to-back XWW Commentator of the Year. With that comes some responsibilities, but also a lot of fun and excitement, and I'm never ashamed to look like a complete fool. Speaking of that, I love playing Magic the Gathering, so much so that I kind of think I play it a little bit too much, and I have some opinions. So now, XtremeTVOnline.com and XWW Wrestling on YouTube presents my podcast where I talk about Magic the Gathering. It's the Goblin Grenade Podcast.
Gonna preemptively warn you while I see if this is actually set to the right mode. It is. This is going to be a longer podcast. We are talking about Diablo 4 Season 6 and the expansion Vessel of Hatred. Blizzard just did a over 2 hour long campfire chat. They've been doing this since Diablo 4 came out. This is by far the longest, most involved campfire chat they ever did. And once Season 6 starts and Vessel of Hatred comes out, this is a completely different game. They are now calling it Diablo 2.0. It's the 2.0 patch. And I have some weighty, heavy things to and opinions about this. I'll be flat out. I do not like a lot of the things coming. And I think I'm the only one that doesn't like a lot of the things coming out in this expansion and Season 6. And we have a load to get through. So let's just start cracking on it now. There's no other option. We're pulling the Band-Aid off mighty quick. Once I said it before, it was over 2 hour campfire chat. And it was their longest campfire chat ever. And the first big thing, the level cap, the way the Diablo 4 works is the level cap is 50. You gain skill points until level 50. After that, from 51 to 100, you gain 4 Paragon points each level, basically until you hit 100, and it equates to 100 Paragon points. That is no longer going to be the case. The level cap is now 60. Yes, that's right. You gain skill points up until level 60. So that's the first bit of news. You can get a couple more skill points and skills now, and it's scaling the difficulty for Journey, the new scaling for leveling Journey. So the old level 50, so the old way it was level 50 and 200 Paragon points. I'm sorry, it wasn't 100, it was 200. Now it's 60 levels and 300 Paragon points. So you're getting 10 more skill points, but also 100 more Paragon points. So that's the first big drop that they did. And then they have now done away with the world tier system. The world tier is your difficulty rating. And they've been trying to do this ever since Diablo 2. Because Diablo 1 had 4 difficulty settings. Diablo 2 has 4 difficulty settings. Maybe 3, I think, actually. And Diablo 3, day 1, patch 1.0, had 4 difficulty settings as well. And eventually that morphed into 30 difficulty settings. But now it is going from World Tier 1, which is your beginning, World Tier 2, which you spend enough time in until you can capstone dungeon that, to get into the briefest of times in the World Tier 3, and then you hit max tier World Tier 4 relatively quickly, and then you ascend to 100 and get your Forever gear, which is the endgame gear. Now, the new tier system is normal, hard, expert, and penitent. Okay? That's your 4 difficulty levels. So everyone's probably going to start on hard or expert. And with that, there is now 4 torment levels after that. And these are only accessible once you hit the level cap of level 60. Once you stop gaining skill points at 60, you can now hit Torment 1, Torment 2, Torment 3, and Torment 4. I do not like this at all. The pace that they're trying to dictate to you is to let you play at your own pace. You do not need to do this preconceived notion of going from world tiers 1 through 4. And I get it. I mean, I've been doing it since day 1 with the world tiers, but it's letting you challenge yourself. And the main inspiration came about from the Mind Cages that was released in Season 4. And That's when the Helltides happen. You can raise the Helltide level, the monsters in Helltide level, by 10 levels for every mine cage you eat. And people were enjoying doing that insanely difficult content, along with the pit, having level 200 creatures and whatnot, and the end game, and the uber bosses having level 200. So they were very inspired by that, and the small percentage of players who actually hit that. So they backpedaled a lot and came up with these new tiers. But now the stats are scaled for readability's sake. And what they mean by that is, the easiest example I can give is, I listened to a couple people, and Riker made a good point. A 10-digit number in Diablo 3, you do billions of damage, okay? And those numbers will still be 100 billion that you hit, is far more complicated to read than a 9-digit number. You don't hit nearly as hard in Diablo 4 as that. And they've always said, and they maintain, that they do not want to see those type of numbers unless something accidentally happens. And to Blizzard's credit, when those accidents happen, they keep it in. They've kept it in. They say, hey, we're going to take this one on the chin. You folks are having fun with it. Have at it. But it's going back to the original Diablo 4 pre-season 1 promise of smaller numbers to deal with. So they're once again reworking gear. They're once again reworking everything just after they did Loot 2.0. It's a modification. So you could consider this portion Loot 2.1. The monsters will scale to your current level no matter what tier you're in. That is world bosses. That is endgame content. That is nightmare dungeons. That's pit for the most part. They will scale to your level. And 2.0 is all about difficulty. So the difficulty is going to adjust damage, experience, gold, all that other stuff. They don't want people getting one shot by bosses anymore. You could be level 100 power gamer and hit a level 200 boss and just immediately lose focus for a millisecond and get killed immediately. On top of those bosses being able to one-shot you, they are no longer going to be bullet sponges either, which I hope doesn't apply to the world bosses, because I really feel what they did in Season 5 with the world bosses is actually fun. It has been a good 7 months since I've seen some of the mechanics of the bosses when they get vulnerable or weakened or stunned. Avarice has a thing. The world boss, the gold world boss Avarice, has a mechanic where once it's vulnerable and prone to attack and immobile, it will spawn treasure goblins that you can kill to get more loot. It has been 7 months since I've seen that mechanic because these bosses have been getting immediately killed. So I'm hoping that doesn't apply to the world bosses, because some of those fights are some of the best fights in the game, because you're dealing with multiple people at once, players beating this world boss at once. So I hope that doesn't happen for the world bosses. All content will be viable at all levels of play, from normal to Torment Tier 4. The higher the Torment difficulties, higher difficulty Torment, it's going to be a long one, folks. I apologize. The higher Torment difficulties are unlocked via the pit. It's, I feel, some of the worst content in the game. I know, hot take, right? Goblin Grenade podcast for a reason. That's why it's called that. It's some of the worst content in the game next to Nightmare Dungeons, and we'll get to that in a bit. But now you unlock the torments by going deeper and deeper into the pit. Torment 1 will give you everything in the game. It will give you your forever thing. Once you hit like level 100 and whatnot, and you hit your max paragons and all that other stuff, you basically look for the min-max gear, your forever gear that they call it, your endgame gear, the best gear in slot that you can get, and you grind towards that. So after beating all the content in the game, that's what you go for. Now, it's once you hit Torment 1 is when you can start that approach. You will not get you can get all your forever gear in Torment 1, but it's going to take you a very long time. The way it's meant to be is once you start wrecking face in Torment 1, then you unlock Torment 2 in the pit, and then you go into Torment 2 and start getting a little bit more drops that way. Higher tiers, greater and more numerous drop rates, as I said before. Reducing the highest pit tier. Okay, they're reducing the highest pit tier from 200 to 100. But every tier is going to be harder than it normally was. The grind to 100 is going to be way harder than it was before, because now what was the halfway point in the tier is now the end point. Level-wise, like numerical-wise. But difficulty-wise, it's going to be far beyond anything they've presented right now. Keys can open whatever difficulty you're at, let alone, along with all the content, meaning mats, everything. You want to take an Uber on one of the non-torment difficulties, you can. You want to take on a world boss, you want to take on a Uber boss in Torment 1, you can. Might be harder to do, but you can still do that. The ladder bosses, which are the Ubers, unlock at Torment 1. So once you get to you can't do all the content until you get to Torment 1, because then the ladder bosses kick in, and that's when they start appearing. But the cost of the materials are the same no matter what. There's no more tormented bosses. There's no more uber angry bosses. There's just the boss. You summon it, and boom, you fight it. The monster levels gears are changing. The monster levels end gear are changing. Okay. Gear, the max item power gear is 925. This will no longer be the case. So it's not an ascent to get all your gear to 925 anymore. Regular items are going to be capped at 540. When you hit levels 51 to 60, they will now be capped at a max item level of 750. This is going along with lowering the numbers of the game. Ancestral items are rare drops, and their power level will be capped at 800. If not, they start at 800. They are guaranteed a greater affix, and only ancestral items will have the greater affixes. This is completely different than what it was before. Sacred items, so you won't no longer exist. So there's no more sacred rare, sacred ancestry. It's just either rare or ancestral items. But the ancestral items are going to drop fewer and far between. And the ancestral items start dropping at Torment 1. So basically you're going to play through the first 4 difficulties, normal, hard, expert, penitent, just to fight your way to 60, get to Torment 1, and then start rocking content out in Torment 1. And this is, once again, as I said, when you get to Torment 1 is when you begin your ascension to finding your forever gear. All legendary aspects are to be buffed. All legendary aspects, the ones that you can affix to items in the blacksmith, are now buffed to be more powerful on ancestral gear. Ancestrals have access to now 2 tempers. Regular items only have access to 1 temper. Ancestrals can be masterworked up to 12 times. Regular items can only be masterworked 4 times. So you're on the pursuit for ancestral items, getting them geared up, getting them tempered as much as you like, getting them masterworked as much as to your heart's content, to whatever numbers you want to hit. That was the first of big changes, and that took 13 minutes, and now we're about to talk about Paragon levels and the Paragon changes. Normally, as right now, before Season 6 starts, you hit level 50, you stop gaining skill points, you gain Paragon levels. Then you get 200 Paragon levels, and then that's it. Now, every Paragon board has a socket in there for a glyph that adds different things to your abilities, add buffs, way more powerful stuff. Now, those glyphs can level up to 21. And once you hit glyph level 15, you get an area boost, so it looks for everything. Glyphs will have things like, if you have 40 or more willpower, they'll have their primary power and a secondary power, and the secondary power has to be hit if in around the grid area in a area close to the grid you have, like, say 40 willpower, you'll do 20% more critical strike damage. When you hit level 15 right now, it expands. This is no longer the case. The glyphs go from a max level of 21 to 100. And glyph level 15 still unlocks the radius. However, once you hit glyph level 46, you unlock a second radius increase and transforms to a legendary transforming to a legendary glyph with a powerful bonus. So you can level your glyphs to 46 all the way up to 100, but once you hit 46, it hits the max. It gets another boost to everything else. The glyphs are now upgraded by the pit, no longer the nightmare dungeons. Big question mark. Because they're basically doing Diablo 3's greater rifts, where you can level your legendary gems with a percentage chance to fail. Yes. You have a chance to upgrade it, but completing a glyph. And I literally wrote, I love when the attempts fail and I did all that work for nothing, which is going to happen a lot. I love doing that in greater rifts. Getting your gems up to 150 level in Diablo 3 was a nightmare to behold, because there'd be time you're having to do such high content for low percentages that there'd be times where like I'd run like 5 greater rifts and maybe get 1 upgrade to a gem. Them the breaks, kid, and now we're gonna get to experience it in Diablo 4, the quote-unquote new game. But if the level of the pit that you did is 10 levels higher than the glyph that you want to improve, it's automatic, guaranteed, happens. It'll happen. If it's 20 levels higher than the glyph that you want to level, so if your glyph is level 1 and you did a level 21 a pit, you will not only get a guaranteed level up, but you will also get bonus level ups if it's 20 levels and above. So there's a little softening on that, but you're going to hit a brick wall, just like we all did in Diablo 3 when you get to a certain point in these glyphs. And the fact that you're really gunning for 46, but, you know, the small percentage of min-maxers out there are going to hit hundreds as fast as they can. This will lead to faster glyph leveling, and blue glyphs, the uncommon glyphs, no longer exist. They're all rare and or legendaries now. Don't know why that changed, but nobody uses the blue glyphs at all. It's all rare glyphs, and I think Riker said it, and I agree with it. It's kind of like an original design of Diablo 1 pre-release, where these blue glyphs were meant to be socketed into your Paragon board while you were getting your gold rare glyphs. This almost never happened. Everybody just waited for the glyphs to drop and get all their glyphs in a row. But now, we're not done yet. It is realm-based Paragon points, meaning in your softcore, and they only mention softcore, so you can't do this in hardcore. But in your softcore characters, hardcore meaning once it's dead, if you die, you're permadead. Like, you can't bring that character back, and depending on the level, you get a memorial plaque that you can see for all your dead hardcore characters. Softcore, say you get to the Paragon level 300, you roll up a new character. They are going to have 300 Paragon levels, but you have to wait till level 60 to use those Paragon levels. Okay, I get it, but it still doesn't make it any better, because in Diablo 3 we can immediately roll a new character with Paragon levels once we hit 100, which took like 5 minutes in Diablo 3. It took like 2 hours on average for me in Diablo 3 to go from level 1 to max. So, or level 80, whatever the max level was in Diablo 3, leave me alone. It's been over a year and a half since I played the game. It only took you a few hours. But you can roll a new character and immediately get to level 60 and Paragon glyph him to your heart's content. The increase to Paragon 200 to 300, it extends the leveling journey. 200 is still like your soft cap, if you will. The amount of time it's going to take to get from Paragon level 1 to 200 should be relatively easy. From 2 to 300, it's going to be a grind. A big old grind. And You can only have now 5 Paragon boards maximum, including the starter board. So whatever class starts boards, you get 4 extra Paragon boards, and that is it. So they are now decreasing the amount of builds we can have. Cool. Less options is always bad. You can, like, I don't like this because now you are nerfing the Paragon builds, giving us more Paragon points, but now letting us not use as many Paragon boards. I can see on one fact that they're coming from that the main thing was to unlock as many Paragon boards as possible, to get as many glyph sockets in as possible, but that led to really awesome builds, and now that's probably not going to happen anymore. You're not going to have that crazy, unique individuality. Let's be honest here. We all look at Max Roll GG and at Icy Veins and all those other websites to get our builds. I do. But I feel like we're not going to have as many builds. There's not going to be like 4 different barbarian whirlwind barbarian builds anymore. Just like there's not going to be as many barbarian Ren builds anymore, or lightning sorcerers, or fireball sorcerers. It's only going to be like 1 or 2 viable builds for content. I don't like it. I do not like this at all. I am not a fan of putting a cap on how many boards you can have. And basically, I also get the feeling that, like, once you hit 300, you've basically just filled in all 5 of those boards. There's not going to be, it's just going to be a race to fill all your boards up. And some of these boards just have things your build's not going to use, so you're going to be wasting resources on worthless shit, I feel. And they did make an emphasis that saying it's not as important, it's not as important or powerful to get from Paragon 200 to 300. Level 200 is pretty powerful. They equated it to getting to level 90 in Path of Exile, something I'm very familiar with because I just did it for the first time. And level 90 in Path of Exile is pretty potent. I could definitely get to almost the end game content here with my level 90 Sunder character, Sunder Bleed character. And that's not even an optimal build either, but it is really powerful and it does some really awesome things. They're saying that's going to be the same thing, but that would be equating it to going from level 90 to 100 in Path of Exile. The problem is, if you do the level 300 Paragon, it's not going to be a significant difference than a level 200 Paragon. And the big difference between a level 90 character and a level 100 character in Path of Exile is about 10 more points in that board, which you can get the spiciest build. You can finally get over the hump of having enough life to not get one-shotted by bosses, or doing enough damage at any one given time to kill bosses as fast as possible. You see the power level from 90 to 100. I see it when I watch people playing the game, the best players of Path of Exile. There's a significant jump to 90, 100. And now in Diablo 4, there's not a significant jump from Paragon 2 to 300. And honestly, the small percentage of players that are going to hit Paragon 300, if what they're saying is going to be a grind, they did it just for them. You did it just for the streamers and the random hardcore players that min-max all the time. I min-max one character almost. I don't even min-max, actually. I don't even have enough time to do that. I'm not even good enough in the game to do it. I've leveled 100 every character since Season 0. I leveled all 5 characters before the first season dropped. I've leveled characters to 100 at least, completed the season journey, and Season 2 and Season 4, I did it with 2 characters to get to 100 because I had fun in those seasons. All classes have a new board, okay, and all existing boards have been retuned. What that means, do not know. The PTR drops today. I'm recording this the Friday before this because this just dropped a day or two ago. But I needed to get it out. I needed to record it because these fresh thoughts in my mind. So who knows? Maybe there's more points to spend and more viable points to spend. My barbarian does not need willpower. For the most part, I do not need to sidetrack and getting random bits of dexterity when I'm already got all the dexterity I'll ever need in a character. The joke I had about Diablo 3 having 30 difficulty levels, there's normal, hard, expert, master, torment 1 through 80. Now Diablo 4 has the 4 normal tiers and 4 torment tiers. Torment's 1, 2, 3, and 4. I played Diablo 3 since day 1, patch 1.0. I've seen the change. I saw the changes as the game went along. This is how it begins. This is how getting 80 difficulty levels begins, because it's exactly the same shit that they did in Diablo 3 when they had the 4 difficulties and then they added another 5th difficulty to it, and then they added the first 4 torment levels. So I want to see how many torment levels this time next year, August of 2025, there will be. And if there is 8 torment levels or more, I called it. But wait, there's more. Now we're getting into tempering affixes. They've been retooled as well. New affixes have been added. So instead of, you'll have a chance to double strike instead of throwing 2 projectiles and stuff like that on skills that didn't do that, or characters that couldn't throw anything. Weapon affixes now grant damage bonuses only on the weapons. And the armor gets buffs and passives as well, or buffs to like critical strike damage, critical strike chance. All your weapons affixes will be for damage and damage related things. Each manual will have now 3 recipes. Now, when you go to temper, there's a bunch of different things you do: utility, mobility, weapon, power, all this other stuff. Some of them only have, it'll open like a subclass, submenu. Some of them will only have 3. Some of them will have 5. Some will have 4. It's completely weirdly determined. So when some of the affixes that you need on tempering, you have a 1 in 20% chance of getting it. Now they want to increase those odds and make sure each one has 3 of the 3 options only. So it's a 1 in 33 chance now. You could still brick items, but it's going to happen theoretically less. Here's my thing. Why can't we just choose what fucking affix we want? And then we just get the chance for the roll. Because not only do you roll for a chance on the affix, but you're now rolling for a percentage of the chance or a number, high or low, on what you're going to get. There's a lot of variables. It's less than 33%, I'll tell you that right now, as somebody who's bricked a lot of items because I was looking for movement speed on my boots, and instead I got thorns speed, thorns damage, or whatever the fuck. And it just sucks knowing that you have a really good piece of gear that only has 1 good temper to it, and the other one is completely useless because your character doesn't even care about it. I want to have the ability to choose, and then that percentage goes into the numbers, and the higher the number, like say 20% movement speed is max, but you can get as low as 8% movement speed. The high, you'll have more of a chance of lowering roll than high, but you'll at least have something viable and usable instead of having a worthless piece of shit gear because your tempering was, the RNG gods were not on your side that day. Ultimate skill, I'm just so furious at that, and I know they're going to change that by this time next year as well. They're going to change that you can choose your temper because they did it in Diablo 3. See a fucking pattern here, folks? Yeah, I'm kind of mad. I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of irrationally angry at this campfire chat because I think they have fucked Diablo 4 with this, with the 2.0 patch. I think it is an overcorrection that doesn't need to happen. And yet here we are having to deal with the ramifications of an overcorrection for the foreseeable future for a game that I've been playing for a year, a game that I've put hundreds of hours, and if not 1,000 hours already, into this game. And now I just get to see it completely change. It's like a brand new game. Yay! Ultimate skills can now have more than 1 point put into them, which is different. That's never happened before. Once you get an ultimate skill, it's only 1 point, and that's what it is. Every time you put another point into that ultimate skill, it not only ups the power of that ultimate skill, but it's also going to reduce the cooldown time. I love it. That's also part and parcel with the 10 extra points as well. that you're going to get. So some of them can be put into your ultimate skills. And items like Harlequin's Crest and Shaco are no longer going to give you access to an ultimate skill that you have not put a point in. So that's why Harlequin's Quest and Shaco's were so sought after, because they had the ability to give you an ultimate ability without putting a point in. So you could put that point into something else. Like for like Barbarian, for instance, like if I got like the Barbarian's ultimate ability that rolls with whatever meta Barbarian is at the time, whether it's Call of Ancients or whatever I'm using right now, that's one more point I could put in the Whirlwind, which is my main source of damage. They no longer do that for you. I agree with that. I think that's a good idea. Especially if we're getting 10 more skill points. I'm going to take a drink real quick. I also ordered more cards for Bloomborough. Mice Deck 2.0. Happening soon. All right, now that I've gotten my throat a little cleared off here. Classes now. Each class has a new skill and a new passive. Let's start with Barbarian. Mighty Throw. You throw your weapon, and it kind of stays there and spins around a bit, causing AoE damage and damage over time. Weak. Their passive now is a Thorns passive, because somebody on Blizzard's has a boner for Thorns and they want to make it a thing. Please, Blizzard, whatever developer you have that thinks Thorns is this great idea, stop. You've been trying to make Thorns a thing for 6 months. Nothing has worked. Please, for the love that is all holy and everything about the good grace of Diablo series itself, stop making Thorns a thing. It's not going to happen. Even with this, it's not going to happen. I swear to you. So Barbarian got the shaft on the new skill and passes, but that's okay, because Barbarian's been the most OP class since the beta. And its new legendary has a new legendary Paragon node that has a chance to make Earthquake spawn Dust Devils. Dust Devils is awesome. Dust Devils is what everybody's playing. Stop making Thorns a thing. Sorcerers get a new Conjure skill. It's familiar. That's pretty cool. What it does is it whatever the last element spell that you cast, and you cast it, it fires that spell. So whether it was a fire spell, an ice spell, whatever the last element spell that you casted, this conjured familiar is going to just launch it with reckless abandon at things. I like it. And then the passive is basically wanting you to mix and match your elements to get a buff for each different element you've used previously. So it wants you to use more than just fire, use more than just ice, use more than just lightning. You know, you're not going to see a lightning build, a fire build, or a ice build anymore. You know, you're going to see lightning ball sorcerers use fire and an ice spell just to get bigger buffs on them. I dig it. Druid, Stone Burst is pretty cool. You can hold it down and keep holding it down to keep doing bursting damage, or let it go really quick just to do a quick snap damage in case you get crowded up by enemies and they're waffle stomping you. You can just immediately let it go and let all that damage go. And then the enables companions, and the video they showed, I shit you not, was a druid with all of his wolves that were turned to werewolves. So we had like 8 werewolves, and they were just destroying and ripping apart everything. It looked so cool. Necro is getting a barrier. Soul Rift, which is just kind of like sucking souls and doing damage over time, and every enemy killed by it gives you an aura and a barrier. They're trying to make barrier a thing for Necros now, which is great because the blood builds on Necros are really good, really sturdy, really made of strong stuff. If you're not, you are fragile. Way more fragile than glass. You are like the thinnest sheet of glass that can absolutely destroy everything. But if an enemy even so much as breathes on you, you are done for. So they're trying to get barrier up for that. And then the curses, they want to make curses viable with the passive as well. So you can now curse enemies a little bit more, and it'll actually do something. Rogue gets, I think, the coolest shit ever. Dance of Knives, spin to win. It's like Barbarian Whirlwind, but you're throwing knives. I dig it. It looks visually awesome. It looks wicked cool. And it's a channeled skill as well. There's no resources needed. You get X amount of charges. You can hold it down until all the charges are done, or just tap it to do a little bit, let it go. Tap it to do a little bit more, let it go. I think it looks so cool. And the buffs are for non-physical damage and mixing and matching to different elements. Kind of like the wizard, a sorcerer, I mean, but letting you get a little bit more defensive with your buffs and debuffs. Now, the two new unique items, there's going to be more, apparently, in the Vessel of Hatred, Season 6, are interesting to say the least. It's actually showing you how the numbers are getting lower. So these are mythic unique items. These would be considered uniques right now. This would be considered like your Harlequin's crest and your Shakos. First up, we have Shroud of the Fake Death. It's 800 item level. Normally, they would be a 925. You only get 140 armor for it, but you get +1 to all your passives. So you can unlock every passive with this. Plus 111 all stats, once again, lowering the number. Plus 222 to life. Plus 333% damage on next attack after entering stealth. And the passive ability for this particular item is, if you haven't attacked in the last 2 seconds, you gain stealth and 40% movement speed. So every 2 seconds, you're going into stealth and you're popping it and getting a big damage boost off your next attack, on top of getting every single passive unlocked, which is going to open up builds, not in the way I want them to, but it's going to open up more viable options. And then we have the one, Hair of the Perdition. This one's unique. This one's interesting. 800 item level, 100 armor, 200% damage to angels and demons. Yes, that's right, angels and demons. 20% critical strike chance, 20% lucky hit chance, 20% movement speed, +3 to core skills. And its passive is give into hatred and earn Lilith's favor, increasing damage dealt by 60%. Slaughter enemies to briefly steal Lilith's favor from nearby enemies. So from nearby allies. If you're in a party of 4, this Lilith's favor will be rotating around all of you. And every time it rotates, for each new person it rotates in the party, it adds 60% to it. So the second person gets it, they get 120% increase in damage. Then the third person, it gets 180. And then if it goes back to the original owner, it's 240%. That's the cap, 240%. There's going to be some weird shenanigans going on with this item, and I'm all for it because there's going to be parties built exclusively on this armor piece, where they're constantly swapping Lilith's favor, and you're going to have your barbarians swinging in for 240% more damage on top of everything else. The thing that intrigued everybody else and thought it was a misprint at first was the 200% damage to angels and demons. Demons, we fight plenty of in Diablo 4. There's not a single angel in this fight. And if you follow the story, spoilers a little bit, Inarius, I think, very mad. The angels are, let's just say the angels are very mad about how certain events played out in the story. They mad at everybody. They're not just mad at the forces of hell. They're also mad at the people of Sanctuary. So I have a feeling we're going to be caught in between this big old war between angels and demons, and the angels' side quest is destroying Sanctuary and all humanity because they're tired of dealing with humanity's shit. So yeah, some interesting things are going to be happening in Season 6, Vessel of Hatred. That's for damn sure. Or Season 7 or 8. They could be playing the long game here. There could be no angels in Season 6 and Vessel of Hatred. There could be none. This could take This could percolate for like 6 months if they wanted to. And that's really cool. That is what we call in the business long-term storytelling. They also are fixing normal crowd control, normal enemies that crowd control. They want to turn the hard locks into a soft. A hard CC into a soft CC. What a hard crowd control means, when you get hard crowd control, you can't do shit for 3 seconds. You are immobilized, you are paralyzed, you are fragmentized, and all the other tises, and you can't do anything. A soft CC, you can't move, but you can still attack and use abilities. Or you can still use abilities but not attack. You know, you can do at least something when you're soft CC'd. But if you're hard CC'd, nothing. And normal enemies can hard CC you, and you get into a loop of being hard CC'd for like 10, 15 seconds, and that's a death sentence for your character. So they're getting rid of that on the normal characters at least. Now, elites and legendary monsters and all that, they'll still be able to hard CC. But your normal, basic bitch, white monster, white difficulty, normal monsters are not going to CC you anymore. Blues and golds and oranges will. I like that. We're almost winding down here, folks. We have a new inventory tab for socketable items like jewels and gems, and something that we'll talk about in a few moments. We have a new stash tab, so now we have 7. And that new thing I was going to talk about, rune words, are now in Diablo 4. Yay! If you don't know what rune words are, Diablo 2 used to be a really fun game, a really awesome game where there was tons of builds and tons of quality and tons of off-meta builds that were available. And then, sometime after Diablo 2 launched, a couple of years later, I actually think, they released rune words, and it immediately fucked the meta and fucked the game completely, because now you only needed to grind for runes to get the best weapons for your gear so you can move on, because it was just so outrageously OP. It's more in Diablo 2, rune word items are better than set pieces, are better than most legendary items, are better than most unique items. Okay? Every build that you see will make you run, at least in nightmare difficulty, a couple rune word pieces of gear. Now, rune words were easy to fuck up, too, in Diablo 2, because you have to put them in a set order. And if you screw that set order once, there was no going back. You kind of fucked your item. And there was no going back to it. So, there was a risk-reward to the runes, but it became so prevalent that now it's all rune word items. They're trying to avoid this. You can only have 2 rune words on an item. A trigger, and this is what Riker said. It's a trigger rune and an effect rune. The triggers are called rituals. The invocation, or rituals and invocations. You can only have a ritual and an invocation rule. One that causes an effect to happen, and one that lets the effect happen. We'll get to that in a little bit. Each 2-piece combo needs to be that. So you can't have 2 rituals or 2 invokers, and it has a cast and effect with a cooldown, okay, to gain critical strike chance. So you put those 2 together, and now whenever you cast an effect with a cooldown, you get a critical strike chance. Increase to critical strike. Or, if you travel 5 meters, you can replace your next evade with the Sorcerer's Teleport and dealing more damage and become invincible. These generate offerings which need to be used, so it's another item. It's another mana source, if you will, that you need to take part in. So it'll be like this. The Bach rune gains 50 offering by traveling 5 meters. And the other rune that I talked about before, the teleport, is the Ja rune. And if you are familiar with Diablo 2, you know exactly how good Ja runes are. It's a cooldown of 2 seconds, requires 500 offering, and replace your next evade with the Sorcerer's Teleport, which you do extra damage and you gain invulnerability. So you have to walk 10 meters to be able to fire this off. And this can go into any item that has 2 gem slots, 2 sockets. This will be pants, weapons, chest, and now helms. Helms at Season 6 will now have the ability to have 2 sockets in them, or drop a 2 sockets in them. And you can only benefit from 2 rune words, max. You can't have 4 rune words on each piece of gear. You can only have 2 rune words maximum on all your gear. You cannot double up on rune words either. So you can't use 2 of the Bach and Ja, if you will. The only example I had. No, they all have to. The 2 words, the 2 rune words have to be different. They are only available though for people who buy Vessel of Hatred. So I'll be buying Vessel of Hatred, even though I hate 2.0 and what they were doing with it. They will drop in the Undercity mostly. They can drop anywhere in the world infrequently, but in the Undercity, in Vessel of Hatred, they will drop way more during that expansion. They are extractable this time, so you can pull them out, and they are reusable. In Diablo 2, rune words were not reusable. Once you put it on there, it was locked in forever. 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 And if you have 3 of the same rune extra, you can craft them to get a random rune other than the one used of the 3 that you use to craft. So if you have 3 Bach runes and you craft it to get another rune, you will not get a Bach rune. You will get a different type of rune. There's 3 levels to the runes too. There's the magic runes, the rare runes, and then they didn't say the name, but it's a higher tier rune. So I don't know if they're legendary runes or whatnot, but there's 3 different tiers, and I want to guess that they're legendary. That the 3rd tier would be legendary. Now, what does this mean for Nightmare Dungeons going back about 23-something minutes ago? When we talked about Nightmare, you don't level your glyphs with Nightmare Dungeons anymore. This is where you get your masterworking materials. I know, the worst content in the game. Now you have to play both of the worst contents in the game to actually do something. But here's the thing. They are doing Nightmare Dungeons different. You do not have to complete the Nightmare Dungeon, obviously, to get materials, masterworking materials. They will drop on enemies. They will drop more frequently with elites and the Nightmare boss, the Nightmare Dungeon boss. So your bosses, the Nightmare Dungeon boss will drop the mats no matter what. Elites will drop some mats, and every now and again, a random trash mob, the common enemies, they'll drop some every now and again. They are removing the middle room as well of the Nightmare Dungeons. What would happen is there'd be 2 big rooms in a Nightmare Dungeon and then this long bit of traveling in between those. They're getting rid of that room. Okay, they're getting rid of that area, replacing it with an elite fight so you can have quicker Nightmare Dungeon experiences. Because you no longer have to, complete the Nightmare Dungeon, if you will. You can just run roughshod through it because you're not leveling your glyphs anymore that way. You're just getting the materials for masterworking. I like this. I really, really do like this because I hate doing Nightmare Dungeons. I hated doing them no matter how many times they buffed the XP, no matter how many times they actually did cool things with the Nightmare Dungeons. I still did not like running Nightmare Dungeons. Now I think I might like running Nightmare Dungeons because I don't like running the pit, and now I'm going to have to run the pit to get the Torment 1 and get all the other special things that you get from running the pit. But Nightmare Dungeons are no longer the problem. And the best part, they haven't even announced Season 6's mechanic yet. They haven't. They're waiting. Season 6 will have an actual mechanic. Kind of like how Seasons 1, 2, and 3 did. It's not going to be like Season 4 where they fixed the loot. It's not going to be like Season 5 where they just added in the Infernal Hordes and nothing else. There's going to be a mechanic involved in Season 6. Thank you. But to Blizzard's credit, on the last time I did this campfire chat stuff when they announced Vessel of Hate Season 5, and alluded to in the fire chat with Loot 2.0, there was many changes coming. I wasn't expecting all of these changes. And if I'm not mistaken, the PTR for this drops today when this drops on the Wednesday, because we drop these on Wednesday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The PTR, for the first 2 days, it's just testing the level. They're not boosting anything. They're not boosting any. You're not getting the boosts for doing a PTR. They want to test the leveling progression of what they're doing now in Season 6 and in Vessel of Hatred. Then after that, they will be giving everybody on the PTR boosts to min-max and run roughshod and see what can be broken, what can't be broken, what's working, what's not working. So they want to do a full proper test with no boosts in the first 2 days just to see how the new tier system works for leveling. There will not be Infernal Hordes in the PTR, but Infernal Hordes is here to stay. All the content's here to stay. They're not removing anything. So that is it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Dom Douglas here, the voice of XWW, thanking you for watching the Goblin Grenade podcast. This was a long one, and don't say I didn't warn you. It was going to be a long one. This PTR campfire chat for Diablo 2.0 now. We've already had Lu 2.0. Now we have Diablo 4 2.0. Whew. I'm tired. Holy shit, where's the Tylenol? Thank you all for watching, and may your top deck always be mythic.